Cornel West 2024 for president is making them lose their minds. Know how I know? Because they putting out hit piece after hit piece. They mention them in every segment. It's like they're just complaining that Dr. Cornel West is running. I got a little clip I want to play for you. It's some Case Study QB. They're on Twitter. They make great content. I appreciate them. Check this clip out and we'll talk about it.
I wanted to ask you about the argument on no labels. I just figured this out because I'm slow. But if you take Ralph Nader's 2 or 3% away from the 2000 election and Jill Stein's 2 or 3% away from the 2016 election, I think it's quite possible that Democrats would have won every election this century.
What they just suggested is that, hey, the Democratic Party would have won if we just didn't have democracy, free elections. Yeah, if we just got rid of that First Amendment right. Damn, if we weren't a free country, I guess they would have won all the time. Because we're going to limit who's able to run for president. How about, Joe, you just say, hey, man, the Democratic Party would have won if we just would have just rigged this whole thing totally. I mean, you rig it enough, but if we would have just rigged it a little bit more, it took away the ability for American citizens to use their First Amendment rights and their rights of citizenship and run for president. Hey, the Democrats will win every time. All we got to do is cheat.
The question is, assuming, of course, in 2004 that it would have been Gore running for re-election and not George W. Bush, who won in part because of Ralph Nader. How serious do you take this third-party threat? And what's the best argument? Because I'm always listening to you. Your book, Win Every Argument, is an incredible book. What is the best argument when you're talking to no labels, trying to dissuade them or trying to encourage them to move in one direction or the other?
Well, first of all, I agree with Tom that we should be very concerned about the prospect of a second Trump term. Anyone who thinks Donald Trump can't win next time round is not paying attention, wasn't paying attention to the margins in places like Wisconsin in 2020, doesn't understand how American politics works, which is fundamentally a two-party system. And then there's a few swing voters and a few people who want to vote third party. I think the third party threat is very serious. It's always been very serious. I don't think it just comes from no labels and a Joe Manchin type, but it also comes from someone like a Cornel West, who I personally have a lot of time for his politics, but I think it's mad for the left to vote for Cornel West when fascism is at the door. And Cornel West himself in 2020 said fascism was at the door and didn't run third party then. I take your point on 2000 with Ralph Nader. Joe, 2016 I think is a little bit more complicated because it's not just Jill Stein. There's Gary Johnson, who was taking votes away from Trump. So there's an argument about whether Stein and Johnson cancelled each other out. We'll never really know. But look, the third party candidate threat is very real, even going back to Ross Perot in the early 90s.
They love talking about Ralph Nader. They love talking about Jill Stein. Let's go back to 2000 since they always want to bring it up, but they never bring it up in context. And I didn't even hear Mehdi Hassan be honest. Do you know there were 300,000 Floridians who were registered as Democrat who decided not to vote for Al Gore? They went and voted for George Bush. See, they would have won if they would have got their Democrats to vote. But Democrats didn't vote for Gore because Gore was a bore and a lame. If you found value in this content, subscribe to this channel. If they would have got their Democrats to vote, but Democrats didn't vote for Gore because Gore was a bore and a lame. And he had no message. And he wasn't that well liked as a vice president to begin with. He went up against a guy who could barely spell, read, was a flunky all through college. George W. Bush just had a rich daddy that basically gave him the governorship in Texas. There was no reason why a vice president got beat up like that, other than the fact he did not excite Democrats. Forget exciting independents. Forget about exciting and turning some Republicans. Forget about encouraging people, exciting people to come and vote and participate for the first time. Disaffected voters who thumb their nose at politics to begin with. Like, the biggest party is independent. So when you fail to get people excited to get off the couch, when you fail, and I'm not talking about the people that have been disenfranchised. That's a whole nother group of people, y'all, right? The people who lost their vote because that's what America wants anyway. They want us to lose our vote. Black people, we had to fight to get the right to vote safely in this country. We didn't really get that right until 1970. That wasn't by accident. Like, it wasn't just an oversight. They killed Medgar Evers for organizing people to use that right. That we already had, technically, but in use in the South, it wasn't happening. So, the Democratic Party's inability to capitalize off of their own candidate, to capitalize off all the media coverage, to capitalize, you realize what was happening, man? We talk about 2000. We talking about when there's no social media. Wasn't no hacking. Wasn't nobody running Facebook ads. There was no Facebook. There was only like 3 networks. And you could control, you know how much the Democrats control the airwaves now? Think about what they did when there was only a few channels. There's only a couple channels that play games, that play content. You control the messaging. How could you not when you got the media in your pocket? Nah, man, they ran a horrible, atrocious candidate in the name of Al Gore. I'm not saying he's a bad person. He's probably a nice person. He sucked as a candidate.
I believe that we in this nation have the ability in this election today to make the United States of America what America is intended to be. A great land where all people are equal and empowered and have their potential released. I ask for your help and your vote because I want to fight for you and I want to fight for that future. God bless you, Florida. Thank you.
Good evening. Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States.
But for the record, anytime someone brings up 2000, remind them that 300,000 Florida Democrats, which is where the election was decided to vote for Bush instead of Gore. 300,000 is a lot of people in a state who were registered Democrats. So what Joe Scarborough here is saying is disingenuous. It's horrible. It's just not true. Now, Mehdi Hassan got up here. He said something about Jill Stein. And okay, Jill. Jill Stein ran. Oh, my God, she ran. I like that Mehdi Hassan did mention, well, Gary Johnson also ran, who got a lot more votes than Jill, by the way. So this shouldn't even be an argument.
Jill Stein received a total of approximately 1,457,216 votes, which accounted for about 1.07% of the total popular vote in the election. Gary Johnson received a total of approximately 4,489,341 votes, which accounted for about 3.27% of the total popular vote.
I think it's Joe Manchin that's running, babe, Joe Manchin. This is a guy that they let decide, he like president-in-chief, and second-string president at this point. They're not really afraid of Joe Manchin. If they was afraid of Joe Manchin, there would be no Joe Manchin. So don't listen to them when they're talking to you about Jill Stein and talking to you about Ralph Nader. Man, just cut them off. That's nonsense. That's a false narrative. They're spinning that false narrative to try to tell you not to support Dr. Cornel West, because Dr. Cornel West is speaking truth to power. He calling them out. He got them afraid. He got them shook. And a lot of those people that are shook look like us. When Dr. Cornel West was on my show, when we was talking, he called out black faces in high places.
We don't want no folk coming out of the blocks and so radical in their 20s and radical in their 30s, and where they end up. Careerists, opportunists, mainstream, well-adjusted to injustice, well-adapted to indifference, accommodating to the status quo, and then want everybody to give them a standing ovation because they black folk in high places. Hey, not impressed.
Right.
Not impressed. I want to know, what's the quality of your struggle? What are you willing to give up for? What kind of risk are you willing to take? Do you make it a priority for Precious Jamal and Letitia in the hood? And that's true for poor folk across the board.
But if they're shook now, you know they're going to be more petrified later. They're going to be shaking like a leaf. Because Joe Biden, the corrupt Democrats, the corrupt Republicans, the sellouts, they don't want a problem. That's interfering with their system of mind control and the nonsense they got people worried about. The distractions they got them focused on. Had the whole world focused on the down submarine of a bunch of rich people who all chose to be in this tin can submarine. Meanwhile, we can't get them to worry about 40% of our black kids under poverty. Can't pay the bills. Bankruptcy, number one cause of bankruptcy is lack of health care. Healthcare bills not being covered. So we start calling out the real stuff, that's when they're going to get really shook. I'm not saying Dr. West is a savior. He can't walk on water. But I'm saying, though, when your enemy is shook, congratulate the person making them shake. When your enemy is shook, get on the side of the person that's making them shook. That's all I'm saying. And when they're worried, when they're concerned, that's good. Because right now, the Democratic Party are running roughshod over all of us. Black people need to get something for their vote. More than the chicken dinner guest at the local Baptist church, more than them coming down and kissing cheeks and shaking hands and taking photos and selfies with you. Nah, don't take no selfie with me. Don't do that. I don't want no Joe Biden selfie, no Nancy Pelosi selfie, no Elizabeth Warren selfie. Know what I want? Freedom. For us all. All right, y'all, that's it. Remember, Tim's Black Table streams Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my the great, amazing Mrs. Black. Remember, like we always say, don't you let nobody take your cornbread. It's your cornbread. Keep your cornbread. It's a new day. Dr. West.
Extra innings are bonus segments from Tim Black's Black Table Show with the Blacks. That's Tim Black and the amazing Mrs. Black. For early access to extra innings, become a paid member of the Tim Black Show at jointimblack.com. Ain't nothing like the real thing. Baby, join today. See you there, Wolfpack.